today on this segment. Mr. Chris Akiri joins us. He's a legal practitioner as well as the chairman, editorial board of national daily newspapers. Thank you for coming on this morning.
It's my pleasure always.
Well, speaking about what we need to do, well, yet again, another reform in the judiciary will be much needed. But when you hear lawyers there say, look, even lawyers are part of the problem, where do you start?
Where do we start? I think, I believe that discipline should flow from the top, not from the bottom. Although lawyers ought to comport themselves after the fashion of eminent men and women in the noble profession, discipline ought to flow from the bench, not from the bar. They have already said that there should be discipline at the bar too, because they are men and women of the noble profession. But discipline ought to flow from the bench. In Nigeria, some judges, and I like to put an accent on some judges are corrupt. And something has to be done about that. When there is deep discipline flowing from there, then we are now talking. Then we will know that, the judiciary is the last hope of the common man.
But is there an effort for self-cleansing, of self-regulation on the part of...
Self-what?
Self-cleansing.
Okay.
By the judiciary themselves. Because many will say, look, do you know what your problems are?
Yes.
Why don't you suggest solutions or do something about the ones that you can help?
Yes, there is some kind of self-cleansing. But just in case these judges don't know, I like to tell them today. That is that, they operate on the Constitution. They believe what the Constitution says. For example, in item 21 of the first part to the third schedule of the 1999 Constitution as amended, says that, the NJC, National Judicial Council, which itself has a problem, and I will come to that later, the National Judicial Council shall recommend to the President the removal from office of any erring judicial officer, period. It doesn't go more than that one. And I think that when we talk of self-cleansing, it has to begin from there.
From where? From the recommendation?
Yeah, from just the recommendation to the President for the removal of any erring judicial officer from office. It should go beyond that one to include the fact that any judicial officer who goes from the sublime to the ridiculous ought just not to be removed from office, but he ought to be handed over to the security officers, to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation for prosecution. And condign punishment is meted out to such a person. First of all, he's sent to, if tried and he is guilty, and is found guilty, he must be sentenced to a certain term of imprisonment, in addition to the forfeiture of his title as a judge, and so on.
Talking about the gradations of the kind of reforms people expect. First, I think fundamentally, has got to be the administration of justice.
Yes.
Because I know we will also have lots of people who will tell you that, look, it's always very difficult for the average person out there to get in there and get justice. If your case doesn't drag on almost like forever, and then you can't even afford the legal fees, to all sorts of things. And then we remember that maxim where we always say judiciary is the last hope of the common man. But in this case, they say, look, it's long gone from the common man.
Yes.
How do we revive that?
Well, you see, to revive that one, at least we have to revive the good conduct of the judges to start with.
Is it just about the judges? What about the lawyers themselves?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about lawyers, maybe. I'll talk about lawyers. But judges, like I told you, discipline has to flow from the top. Now, there used to be a simile on judges, applicable to judges, as sober as a judge. Now, today, I mean, that was in those days. I don't hear about such things now. In those days, you would talk of being as sober as a judge. But today, the sobriety of a judge, particularly the Nigerian judge, some of them, is questionable. Is he sober? Our judges is sober? In other words, we're talking of corruption everywhere. I remember the case of the Chief Justice of Nigeria at that time, in 2011, Justice Iyoga Katsina Alu, and Justice Ayo Isa Salami, the president of the Supreme of the Court of Appeal. Now, Ayo Salami was heading a tribunal in Sokoto, and the Chief Justice of Nigeria was interested in that case. He had interest in that case, which should never be. And when he discovered that the case might go against his own client, that's the Chief Justice client, now he said it should be put on hold. The tribunal operation should be put on hold. Now, so he stopped it. That was too bad. Now the matter went to court. The Judicial Service, Nigerian Judicial Service Commission was to set up a committee to look into the allegation that he was overly interested in the matter and that he had an axe to grind. Now, the Judicial Service Commission that appointed this committee to investigate, was and it continues to be headed by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, who was directly involved in that case. And he was the chairman of the NJC. Now, so what would you expect? Although he stepped aside, he did not resign. He just stepped aside for his own deputy, who was then Justice Mustafa. Now, Mustafa was appointed the chairman, pro tem chairman, and so on. So you can see there is a problem. Of the 23 members of the Nigerian Judicial Commission, 15 of them are appointees.
Now, that's why I was going to ask that question.
Of the NJs, of the CJN.
Let's look at the way judges emerge.
Yes.
Because, many times lately now we hear when we speak to the leadership recruitment process,
yes,
first of all, of politicians. But if I could bring that kind of principle to the judiciary, the way they are appointed, there are many who think that that is indeed very fundamental to the problem or the reforms that we refer to in this case. And then they give analogy in some climes wherein judges are, say, either elected from within themselves or the bar, work it out amongst themselves. In some cases, they're even elected by the people to those positions. How fundamental do you think the way judges emerge is to solving this problem?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any serious problem about that.
Even if governors appoint judges?
It's a personal issue. You see, judges are appointed on the recommendation of the NJC, from recommendation from the Federal Judicial Commission or the State Judicial Commission, as the case may be. Now, to the president for appointment. Subject. No, I said that's state judicial commission or Federal Judicial Commission. State Judicial Commission will recommend to the State Judicial Council, which will then recommend to the governor for appointment.
Why do we see
all that? As far as I'm concerned, is okay.
But why do we see a lot of people complain about forum shopping?
From
forum shopping, wherein state governments find it very easy getting judgments from high courts in states.
Well, I think it depends upon the integrity of the judges involved. Even if my own appointment is made by the governor or by the president, now I am in a position to act on my own without reference to whatever the governor or the president is talking about. I've been made a judge. I'm made a judge. My own salary is charged on the consolidated fund of the Federation of Nigeria. I'm not paid directly by the president or by the governor, because my own salary is there untouchable.
But let me come in here, because if we look at it critically, I think the issue should be within the gatekeeper, the one who is saddled with responsibility of watching what the judges do and shouldn't do.
Yes.
And that comes again back to the NJC. We've heard so many stories. Some are unsubstantiated, some are in whispers, but
yes.
very loud whispers that
yes.
you wonder and ask yourself, truly, is this going on in the judiciary? Some lawyers are also scared to come forward to speak up. Are they saying it is quite difficult for people to send in petitions on judges for them to really kick off some kind of objective and more professional investigation against such individuals?
Well, you see, the NJC that you are talking about is there. It ought to be completely independent. Now, and when any matter is referred to them, just like a judge, you are a judge, and there are petitions against you to the NJC. The NJC sets up investigative committees to look into these allegations. Now, where you are found guilty, or they think you are guilty, they send the recommendation to, when they find you guilty, they send the recommendation to the president that you should be relieved of your post. That they are doing. But what I don't like about the NJC is the composition.
Tell us about the composition.
I beg your pardon?
Tell us more about the composition.
The composition, we have about 22, 23 members in the NJC. And at the top of the NJC is the CJN. Now, the deputy chairman is the next most senior justice of the Supreme Court, which, like the CJN now, and the next most senior person to, the person. Now, that's not proper. And about 15 of the 23 members are appointees of the CJN. So where the CJN is involved in some allegations, and it is up to the NJC to try such allegation, you can now see there is a judge, deciding his own course. That's my problem. Nemo dat esse impropria causa is the thing. No person must be a judge in his own course. So you will see. So what I think is that everybody in the NJC must be made up of retired people, retired, Supreme Court judges, Court of Appeal judges, High Court judges, some senior advocates of Nigeria, some other lawyers, and so on, not necessarily drawn from the existing judiciary, made up of the CJN and so on.
Would that be where you will start if you were to reform the judiciary? That's
where we'll start, because discipline is very important, and that is the disciplinary organ of the judiciary. And then you see, the judiciary is the third arm of government. It is separate. It should be separate from government. You see, now, and the people to discipline the judiciary must not be the judiciary itself. There must be a separate organ. You see, the disciplinary organ of the judiciary now is the NJC, which is headed by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and so on, and who elects about 15 members of that group. So, if it's the third arm of government, the people to discipline that third arm must not be the third arm itself, must be people independent of the third arm.
Always a pleasure to have you on. Mr. Chris Akiri, a legal practitioner and chairman, editorial board of National Daily Newspapers. We will be back in a moment, and then we'll have another matter in a moment. Join us again.